Hello and welcome to the journey of self-discovery. Today's video is a result of a continued reflection and increasing inspiration on the subject of unity in religion. There are so many religions in this world and everyone claims we know the truth. This attitude was at one point really infuriating to me. So much blindness, intolerance and insanity has been justified in the name of religion. Wars have been led to annihilate or convert the non-believers. So-called justice has been established to punish heretics, and all the time institutions have been preaching about the right way of life, while the cases of abuses, hypocrisy and corruption became more and more revealed to our society. But is it all like that? Or is this just a result of a few egoistic individuals exploiting the teachings of saintly persons and sacred scriptures for their own purpose? Do we even need religion at all? Or is there a purpose to it? Is there something that connects the major faiths in this world? And what are the principles that are universally applicable to them? This video is about unity in diversity, in which practitioners of all faith can come together and see what we have in common. A personal reflection of the topic, the unity in religion. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So first of all, the disclaimer. This video is a result of my own relationship I have developed with the term religion. I will try my best to give references and evidence about the statements I make, and of course, I do think they are justified. Nonetheless, it remains my opinion. It is therefore subjective. Talking about religion is a delicate subject matter, but I believe there is a lot to learn when we reflect upon the lives and teachings of saints like Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha and others. And they actually share a similar understanding in many areas. I want to focus on 4 basic principles that are present in all major religious teachings and to some extent even in common human sense. But before we get into these principles, let us first ask ourselves, what is religion? To answer that question, I'd like to refer to some generally accepted sources first. Because for some, the very word religion left a bitter taste in the heart after going through abuses, logical inconsistencies amidst philosophical conclusions, enforced restrictions, or sheer disappointment when facing hypocrisy among the various traditions or institutions. Some say that religion and spirituality is something completely different. So to first define what is religion, I would like to quote from Wikipedia. Religion is usually defined as a social, cultural system of designated behaviors and practices, morals, beliefs, worldviews, texts, sanctified places, prophecies, ethics, or organizations that generally relates humanity to supernatural, transcendental, and spiritual elements. However, there is no scholarly consensus over what precisely constitutes a religion. The Oxford Dictionary states, the belief in the existence of a god or gods and the activities that are connected with the worship of them, or in the teachings of a spiritual leader. So according to these 2 sources, we aren't even very sure what religion actually means, or at least learned scholars do not come to the same definition about that term. So even though the term might have different interpretations, one thing is very clear, that every faith has 3 aspects. The first is the teachings or the philosophy. That is the understanding in which the religion draws its conclusions. Why should I practice it? Why should I have faith in it? Who am I supposed to worship? What am I supposed to achieve? How should I act and what should I avoid? It is usually presented by a holy scripture and a saintly person who represents it and lives according to its teachings. There is a Sanskrit term for this, and this is called sambandha. The second aspect is the practice. So that would be including meditation, praying, singing, regular attendance to religious ceremonies in temples and churches, as well as the implementation of these teachings in one's personal life and the moral principles that come from these teachings. In Sanskrit, this point is called abhideya. The third aspect is the goal. Where is this practice supposed to lead me? What can I expect when I sincerely apply the teachings in my life? And what are the consequences of failing to do so? In Sanskrit, this point is called prayojan. All religions, whether serious or not, are based on these three aspects. What do I mean by not serious? Well, Google Pastafaris and you will find out. So based on these common aspects, I'd like to speak a little bit of my own life and how religion accompanied me in my journey. I was born in a Christian family. Not that I was very serious about it, but I felt some attraction to the narrations and teachings of Jesus. And of course, I liked presents on Christmas. We had religion as a subject in school, but we never really touched on any scriptures or official teachings. We merely talked about morality and ethics, to be honest. When I left school and I started my apprenticeship, I struggled a lot with depressions and had a pretty negative view on life in general. And it also affected my religious belief and it turned into atheism. I found myself pretty disappointed in the Christian philosophy because it left so many questions unanswered. Especially the outcome of a non-Christian life, for example, that will result in eternal hell, seemed quite illogical. How can God be all merciful when he condemns anyone for eternal suffering because he didn't make it in his one life? But besides philosophical plot holes, I think I was even more discouraged by the church and the living examples of Christianity than I was from the philosophy. So when I drifted away from the Christian belief, I decided I will make my own spiritual path, and that my new spiritual search is one based on logic and wisdom that will be different than following any dogmatic teachings. I went on a pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago and I started practicing meditation shortly after. In combination with not quite small amounts of using psychedelic substances like LSD, DMT and marijuana, I was very convinced I found spirituality in myself. At that time I became attracted to the Buddhist teachings. It defines spirituality as something you can experience yourself with the right practice, and it seemed overall a very peaceful path. I started to read some books about Buddhism and I was doing 1 to 2 hours of meditation every day. After 6 months I somehow developed the desire to become a monk and to make it my life. So in my search for a spiritual life, I came across a practitioner of the Krishna conscious philosophy. And since I was generally open, I decided to read the Bhagavad Gita. And while I was expecting another completely new philosophy with different ideas and conceptions than other religious scriptures presented, I was surprised and amazed simultaneously to see that Bhagavad Gita gave a logical explanation to cover all the religions I have come across. It really was not something exclusive, but rather inclusive of all types of faith in a certain way and with a certain view. I then became interested in Vedic teachings. So now you might ask, which religion is this? And the answer that would give most people a hint is Hinduism. But the very term Hinduism is actually quite wrong. The term Hindu was given by the Muslim invaders who at their time conquered quite a bit of India and gave the name to those who would live on the other side of the river Sindhu. They gave them the name Hindu. So a Hindu actually means someone who is some way or other connected with the Vedas. Now in my presentation I want to highlight especially the great world religions of Christianity, Islam, Buddhism and the Vedic culture or Hinduism. I find that amongst many philosophical connections in their understanding about God and the soul, there are various morals and ethics that are advised by all of these traditions. And these 4 are as follows: mercy, cleanliness, austerity, and truthfulness. So the first principle is mercy. According to Wikipedia, mercy is benevolence, forgiveness, and kindness in a variety of ethical, religious, social, and legal contexts. A kind or forgiving attitude towards someone that you have the power to harm or the right to punish is the explanation of the Oxford Dictionary. So the ability to show empathy to others is really in short terms the meaning of mercy. And that is taught through all religions. Jesus taught mercy by personal example, like the famous one of him saving a woman who was accused of having committed adultery. During that time, this was a crime punished by people throwing stones at you until you die. So Jesus replied, "He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone at her." After saying this, the people reflected on his words and left. Then, of course, there's the whole point of his crucifixion. It was to relieve the burdens of the sins of others. And according to the Bible, he was struggling on the cross, but he forgave his tormentors and prayed to God, "Father, forgive them, because they do not know what they are doing." That is a sign of mercy. In Islam, one of Allah's own names are Rahman or Rahim, which means compassionate and merciful. Each of the Quran's 114 chapters, except the 9th, begins with invoking those two names. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. And the Quran states, "Those who spend in ease as well as in adversity, and those who restrain their anger and pardon men, and Allah loves such people who are devoted to doing good, aware that God is seeing them." In Buddhism, the fundamental teaching is about developing two virtues, that is that of wisdom and compassion. Compassion is called karuna, which comes from Sanskrit language. Buddhists believe that they are part of a greater whole, so therefore they are basically serving the spiritual sum and substance of all by practicing compassion. They also teach that practicing compassion is an active endeavor. The Vedas teach compassion as one of the 4 pillars of religion to be cultivated to attain auspiciousness in life and success in material and spiritual well-being. So considering these references, I conclude that there is a central emphasis on religion about mercy and compassion. So now to the second point, cleanliness. Wikipedia says about cleanliness, "Cleanliness is both the abstract state of being clean and free from germs, dirt, trash or waste, and the habit of achieving and maintaining that state. Cleanliness is often achieved through cleaning." Well, that sounds very conclusive. Thank you, Wikipedia. I'd like to add something which might be a bit surprising. Cleanliness is not only practiced externally, but also internally. What is internal cleanliness? It means freedom from dirty qualities and habits that are unwanted. In religion, this comes out in the names of lust, anger, greed, envy, selfishness, and so on. In this regard, Christianity speaks about the famous 7 deadly sins: lust, wrath, pride, greed, envy, sloth, and gluttony. But also external cleanliness is mentioned in the Old Testament. Ablution was considered a prerequisite to approaching God, whether by means of sacrifice, prayer, or entering a holy place. Christianity has always placed a strong emphasis on hygiene, like the famous washing of the feet and the use of water touching your head before entering the church. Islam teaches also a number of regulations involving cleanliness, and I apologize for probably not pronouncing the Arabic words correctly. So there's salat, obligatory prayer, wudu, partial ablution, and ghusl, full ablution, as well as dietary laws and toilet etiquettes which are applied by Muslims. And of course the Quran also deals with excessive and uncontrolled lust and anger as an obstacle to realize Allah. In Buddhism, cleanliness is very much a standard of spiritual life. Buddhist teachings especially point out that sweeping the house or temple, as well as regular baths, are mandatory for a successful meditation. And central teaching of Buddhist philosophy is to become free from the sense of ego, which is considered a purified state of existence. In the Vedic scriptures, cleanliness is even more rigid. According to one's lifestyle and service in society, one should take a bath up to 3 times a day, but at least once while chanting mantras for purification. Of course, the teachings about the dangers of lust, anger and greed are also emphasized in the Bhagavad Gita. So coming to the third principle, austerity. Now for this one I had some difficulties finding a scholarly definition in regards to religious principles. Therefore I'd like to share my own understanding here. To put it simple, austerity means to reduce one's bodily necessities like eating and sleeping to a minimum. Austerity also means to tolerate inconvenience in the pursuance of one's duties and to stay free from distractions of one's spiritual goal. A mother, for example, has to sometimes tolerate the misbehavior of her child in order to raise it, and cannot just punish it in order to have peace. Or even more simple example, I have to get up in the morning for my work to earn my livelihood, whether I like it or not. Let's start again with Christianity. From the example of Jesus, we can learn that he accepted many austerities he did not have to accept in order to benefit others. That's the whole point of his spiritual journey up to his crucifixion. But also in general, Jesus was known to be a very simple man, born as the son of a carpenter and living his whole life without material opulences. On practical terms, in Christian practice, austerity also means regular attendance in the church and hearing from the Holy Bible to deepen one's understanding of Christ's teachings. Fasting is a very important aspect in the time before Easter. The 10 Commandments include 2 which are especially connected to austerity. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and thou shalt not steal. How is stealing connected with austerity? Well, it means I must be satisfied with what I have and not encroach on others' property. So that is an austerity. So now coming to Islam. Since I do not know very much about Islam myself, I have made some research in the internet, and this is from a website teaching Islam. Riyat, austerity, which we can describe as disciplining life, appetite and thirst, and sleeping and waking only in order to develop the feelings of praise for and thankfulness to God, and balancing these by keeping them within the limits of needs, has been used in the terminology of Sufis to mean the training of the carnal self and the acquiring of good, praiseworthy qualities. It has been accepted as a means of restraining the carnal desires, which include appetite, thirst, and sleep, by restricting them. Muslims also follow the fasting month known as Ramadan and practice regular daily prayers as a form of austerity. In Buddhism, I think we all have some of an idea how Buddha was austere, and it really comes to the minds of many. He was born as a rich prince, yet he decided that wealth would not make him happy, or can solve the problems of death, old age and disease. So he went out in search for enlightenment. Buddhism really teaches a life of minimalism, to accept whatever is offered and obtainable without extraordinary effort. Now, a central part of Buddha's teachings is meditation, and in order to practice meditation, it's not just an activity by itself, but it has to be accompanied by a favorable lifestyle. And what includes a favorable lifestyle? You guessed it, austerity, or minimizing one's bodily needs in order to deepen one's meditation. Lord Buddha is supposed to have achieved enlightenment after continuously meditating for 49 days under a fig tree. Vedic regulations of austerity are very much connected to the social status and spiritual capacity of the individual. So is a brahmacharya, or a monk student, for example, required to live a life of strict celibacy under the instructions of his spiritual master. His eating habits are also regulated by him, and his life is one of learning the scriptures and serving his guru. A grihastha, or a married person, his main austerity is to give charity to those who are in need of it. A vanaprastha, or someone who renounced the household life, should practice yoga and meditation in seclusion to attain self-realization. And a sannyas, or a person in the last stage of spiritual life, is meant to preach and teach by his own example as in form for his austerity. In all religions, the austerity of holy marriage is greatly emphasized, and the sacred tradition is even governed by so many laws in our society today. Marriage does not spring from a modern sentiment, but is anchored in ancient religious traditions that sanctify the connection and love between a man and a woman, so there is commitment towards each other and will not be broken by the hardships of this world. So now, last but not least, truthfulness. This is the most important of all principles, because whether or not any of the other principles are relevant depends solely on whether or not they are true. And none of the mentioned traditions will bear any fruits if its practitioner does not apply the teachings sincerely and honestly in his life. Truth means reality, and truthfulness in religion means reality as it is experienced and understood by the great leaders and saintly persons that realized the conclusions of its teachings. And while I did more of detailed quoting on the other religious principles, I would rather sum up this one by the fundamental teachings we can see in Christianity, Islam, Buddhism and the Vedic scriptures. Buddhism, for example, is completely centered around the Four Noble Truths. The Bible and Quran declare the truth of the scripture by praising it as God's words, free from any fault or defect. Now, while the Vedas have a sort of similar approach, Veda itself means knowledge. So at least the way I approach it is by experimenting myself how these teachings affect my life and see the result of it. We might see differences in philosophy and cultural background, but the desire to understand the truth is present in all of us. That's why there's science, right? It is generally accepted by every follower of a particular type of faith that his one is the truth. Otherwise, why would I choose to follow it? Sure, it can be out of tradition or sentiment, but that's not true following and it's not substantial practice. Being truthful means more than just not lying. In order to be truthful, we need to forge our lifestyle in a way that there is no hypocrisy in our character. And if you think about it, what is the most shocking and distancing instance of a person turning away from religion? It is hypocrisy that led to misuse, misinterpretation and total mocking of the teachings that are falsely represented by such insincere followers. Now, if I'm convinced that my religion is the truth, then why do I become so insecure if others do not accept it? Why does it go even so far as to translate into violence when my religion is not accepted as truth? Let truth itself be the strength that will carry and empower us. Some say that religion and spirituality are not at all the same, and to some extent I agree with that. However, my understanding of religion is that whatever you practice, if you do it sincerely, you will develop your spiritual qualities. Because we can see clearly, religion gives a great deal about morals and ethics, because it is required to develop good qualities in order to understand the truth about spirituality. And in this way, the great teachings that have been passed upon us by those who made a serious effort to cultivate and represent them appear according to time, place and circumstances in different cultures to help us understanding that there is indeed one spiritual truth we are all intimately connected with. The Bhagavad Gita explains, in order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. So from this verse, we can get some sort of understanding why is there so many different religions. It's because there are different backgrounds for everyone and different circumstances in which religious principles appear. And it's either God himself appearing or sending his empowered representative to teach this religion. Because by practicing religious principles, we come closer to him. And this is one of the essential meanings I saw in Bhagavad Gita, and that impressed me, that it sort of makes sense and it's not excluding others. So this video is an attempt to point out that connection we share appearing in different disguises and cultures, but in the end have the same import. These four principles of religion are actually pillars, and these pillars maintain a house in which the whole world can fit in. If we want to advance in our life and develop our character, We must accept these 4 principles of mercy, cleanliness, austerity, and truthfulness to form an actual human society that is welcoming, kind, and trustworthy to everyone. But if we maintain violence, deceit, greed, and selfishness, we will simply destroy ourselves and not learn the important lesson we are meant to discover in this human birth. Speaking about how we can be happy and peaceful is very easy in theory, but in practice it is not. To become truly happy and peaceful means I have to work on myself, improve myself, and take others' happiness and peace into my consideration. We do not live alone on this planet, and our decisions influence the lives of many. May that wisdom guide us to make the right decisions and move forward on the path of self-discovery. A self that is full of good qualities and knowledge that will bring us true fulfillment. If you made it this far, then I would like to fold my hands and thank you. You might share these ideals, and that is very rare in today's world. No matter what faith you practice, if you do so sincerely, then you will make spiritual advancement. That is what my spiritual teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has taught me, and that is what I truly believe myself, and I wanted to share. I hope we will see you again here to the journey of self-discovery.